Hey everyone, welcome to Week 3 recap and highlights for the 32-team franchise. We'll go ahead and get started with the overviews. So we have the Arizona Cardinals coming away with a surprising victory against the Atlanta Falcons at home on Thursday Night Football. You see Manning had 224 yards, 3 TDs, and an interception. Le'Veon Bell had 76 yards. I mean, he's been having a great rookie season so far. Meacham Fitzgerald chiming in for some catches there, Joseph Morgan there. But it was the Cardinals that slipped away with the victory. We see Darren Sproles with 2 rushing touchdowns, Mike Wallace getting the touchdown from Dalton. So now they are tied at 2-1 here in the third week of the season. Then the Carolina Panthers come away with a tight victory over the St. Louis Rams. Andrew Luck with 184 yards, but more TDs than touchdowns. Luck did have a rushing touchdown, though. Tim Hightower only 33 yards. We see the Carolina Panthers with Booker and Tate both getting a touchdown each with their dual running back system. Then moving on, we have the Minnesota Vikings falling to the Miami Dolphins, who are supposed to be the number 1 team this year. We see 262 yards, 3 touchdowns for Newton with an additional 49 yards rushing. Matt Forte with 61 yards and 2 TDs on the ground. We see Doug Martin, I don't know if he got hurt or maybe they just were trailing a lot, but only 1 yard with 2 carries. We see Glenn Coffey with 3 attempts, 58 yards. Yeah, he did not get hurt. That's right, because I was running out of shotgun, and that's where Glenn Coffey came from. Yep, because he's still healthy. And so the RG3 gets a rushing touchdown, but 2 interceptions. So Vikings fall short to the Miami Dolphins. New England has no issues really with the Chicago Bears. Bears are having a good season, but of course the Patriots had a better one. And so we see Tom Brady with 213 yards, 3 TDs. Charles with 102 yards with a touchdown and also a touchdown receiving with 73 receiving yards. There's been a lot of screen passes and passes to the running back, and Charles has delivered. We see Jason Campbell with 104 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Ingram with 93 yards, but just not enough. Then this was actually a surprisingly, it wasn't like a close game, but the Jaguars were still somewhat in the game against the Eagles. We see McCoy with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Kenjon Barner getting the carries for an injured DeMarco Murray. Gets 49 yards there as a rookie. You see Donovan McNabb, 235, a TD and an interception. But it was Giovanni Bernard who went in for Gore, who did get hurt that game. He actually was hurt. And Bernard came in as the rookie, and he was able to come away with 2 touchdowns and 36 yards. Not a big display passing. I mean, we can see all of them under 100 yards, but really kind of spread the ball around to different receivers. Then you've got the Dallas Cowboys having no issues against the Seahawks. Seattle has been really, really struggling. Eli Manning has not played well at all, I think, this year. 3 interceptions, 2 interceptions, 2 interceptions, 1 passing TD, 201 yards, 133, and then 69. Starting to give Mike Glennon some more opportunities, but he's not playing well either. But they are 0-3. We could see the Seahawks be in contention for Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater, Johnny Manziel in the upcoming draft once those draft classes get made. Russell Wilson really playing well. We see with his past few games, 226, 174. That was a weaker game against the Colts where they lost. Only 150 yards, but he's been doing a fair job of getting his team the wins, and there's some fancy football points there if you have him on your team. But Adrian Peterson, 70. We see 70 yards there and a touchdown. Not really any big receiving options for either team. Then you have the Jets having a tight game against the Browns. Vince Young is the starting quarterback for the Browns because Terrell Pryor is injured for 4 weeks. Now he's 3 weeks now. But Alex Smith came away with 2 touchdowns and 261 yards. Portis with 2 touchdowns as well. Peyton Hillis pounding the ball in for the Browns with that goal line touchdown. But we can see another kind of spreading the ball around. No one really taking the lead there as a receiver. White with 3 receptions at most. But Vince Young had a good debut for the Browns with very little preparation, I suppose. But it was the Jets all the way. They were able to come away with that 3-point victory. Then 2 0-2 teams in the AFC North. A shocker for me. I thought for sure that the Ravens were going to lose. I thought the Steelers have more weapons, but 4 interceptions by Big Ben. So it was the Baltimore defense that came away with some multiple turnovers. We see 2 from Arrington, 1 from Ed Reed, and then 1 from Vontae Davis. So the Steelers were not able to really come through. I am looking at possibly having them trade MJD because they do have Lamar Miller, who is in his sophomore season. MJD is getting older. He's 28, so I might decide to move him, especially with them being 0-3. I can't imagine them taking a quarterback. I mean, they could try for Blake Bortles, maybe as a replacement for Big Ben, who's 31. But I think, they probably can take a better player with the top pick there. And then we go on to outside the North. We go to the Buffalo Bills versus Detroit. And Detroit has another bad game. We see them falling 0-3. We see Tannehill, Stanton, all kind of their quarterbacks. So we've got 3 touchdowns for Tannehill this season. We have 3 interceptions, about 598 yards. But Tim Tebow not having a good game either, an interception, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns, so I guess he did it on the ground for him, but not a very good passing performance. We see Jason Hill, I believe. Jason Hill coming up with 113 yards receiving for the Lions with that 1 touchdown, but not enough to really make a difference. And Reggie Bush, the running back there, 28, still a solid contributor for them. I could consider trading him as well, but we'll have to see about that. Then we got the Chiefs, who were actually beating the Chargers the majority of the game, but Aaron Rodgers was able to come back despite throwing more interceptions than touchdowns. Foster with 55 yards, beating Trent Richardson and Smith. We see that big 73-yard reception there by Damian Williams. Good catch by the 4th-year veteran. Foster with 67 yards receiving as well. Steve Smith, who is lowering tremendously in overall, major decline for him, but he gets a few catches there. But the Chargers are able to go up 2-1 on the season, and the Chiefs, who were tied with them at 1-1, go to 1-2. Then we've got the 49ers taking on the Green Bay Packers. And although the Packers were leading the majority of the game, they also, Breeze comes away with a late 4th quarter lead. And then I think it was Deion Lewis who ran it in, for one of the running backs ran it in at the last second to score the final touchdown, just to extend the lead. Alshon Jeffrey with a touchdown, Des Bryant and Brent Selleck. We see Edelman with 2 touchdowns catching for Matthew Stafford. The Packers were 2-0. Now they fall to 2-1. So the 49ers elevate themselves to 2-1. They are 2-0, I believe, now after the opening debut against the Eagles. Then we see Oakland and Denver, a very close game relatively for this game. Matt Ryan with 343 yards, 3 TDs, 3 interceptions. This is another player who's very talented, but just not having a very solid season with his team. The Raiders are not that good, and they show it. Meanwhile, you've got Bradford over there, who's got 286 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a very good season last year, which was great for him. Because, I don't know, does he have his career stats? He don't have like wins or anything, but we see 806 yards, 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions this year. So he's protecting the ball well, which is helping the Broncos rise up to 2-1. We will see if they can truly compete with the Chargers this year, because normally it's been the Chargers division, but they have to. We'll see if Denver's able to steal it from them. But AJ Green, 199 yards receiving, just a cheat code for them. 2 touchdowns. We see Sanu and Bradshaw getting a reception touchdown as well. Also, Sam Bradford ran one in, so that's 5 total TDs for Bradford. Whereas Julio Jones, the rival to maybe A.J. Green, the 2 top receivers in that draft class, no touchdown but 118 yards. Vernon Davis, 2 touchdowns. Craig Davis, 1. Then we have the Colts, who get their first loss of the year. This was a surprise to me because, again, Tavares Jackson, he has a way of winning in season games, so he's able to take a team to the playoffs. He just hasn't done well in the playoffs. But we see, like right here, no interceptions this year in 3 games, 6 passing touchdowns, 751 yards, but a 70.5% completion rate. He's having a great start to this year. His overall is nice, too. He's like, 80? 81. So he's got a good overall. He just hasn't always taken teams deep into the playoffs. Arguably, he's probably one of the better quarterbacks from 2006 because Vince Young is now kind of a journeyman, maybe. Like he's the backup here in Cleveland, just filling in for an injured Terrell Pryor. Matt Leinart has been a backup, and now I think he's in free agency. He's done. Jay Cutler had some starting opportunities, but now he's a backup in Chicago. But so Tavares Jackson might be the best quarterback coming from that draft class. And you can see Brad Smith too. This man, he had like a big 70-yard touchdown reception. Where is it? Receiving long. A 70-yard touchdown pass in this game. And he broke like 2 or 3 tackles. You'll see the highlights in a bit. But he had an incredible game, and he's having an incredible season, especially being a quarterback going into that wide receiver position. Yes, Slater and Greg Jennings are also having a decent year, but Greg Jennings only 145 so far, 199, Brad Smith 252. So Brad Smith goes from the Cardinals to the Titans and finds his home, whereas Quinn threw 4 interceptions. Chris Johnson could only get 44 yards. We see Pierre Garçon getting 100 yards receiving. Kind of their main guys there getting the attention, but not enough to beat their rival. And then the Bengals have a decent offensive performance, putting up 28 points. But then the Giants has had an even bigger offensive performance with 49 points. We see 2 touchdowns from Palmer. There was a fake field goal touchdown you'll see from Jonathan Crompton, who got a touchdown pass thrown to, I believe it was Barnage, that 21-yard fake field goal. But then Matthews with 94 yards, Tawan Jones 4 yards in the touchdown. I think that was a kind of a late score touchdown just to bully them. Matt Spaeth, the main receiver for Osweiler, he got injured, and that's why Ponder came in, but then Osweiler came back. This is probably going to be a year where Brock Osweiler loses his starting job. He had some games last season, and then this season he's just not doing it, and they're just losing all the time. We'll see if they're worse than Pittsburgh. And then you got Houston and the Commanders. This was a very boring Sunday night football game. You can see 2 interceptions by Vic. I think, and also a fumble. I was looking for who had the fumble. Mark Sanchez also not playing well. I was pretty close of benching him for Jeff Smoker this season, but they pulled off the primetime win, so he's going to continue being the starter for now. But bad game, 14-10, low scoring game. But the Texans are able to come away with it. And then you have the Buccaneers taking on the Saints, and the Buccaneers remain an undefeated team. Gabbert with 197 yards. But more importantly, 72% completion, good game manager. We have Darren McFadden, 74 yards, Javid Best, 33, Gabbert, 27, so 2 touchdowns for the 2 running backs. Byron Leftwich, 3 turnovers there, not good enough. We see Isaiah Peed, Rashard Mendenhall, and then kind of a receiving by committee by both teams. Gordon makes his first debut since his 2-game suspension. You can see he's got, 42 yards receiving, only 2 catches. Tried to get him involved early, but didn't need to. It was better giving 17 attempts to Darren McFadden. So there's the weekly review. We'll get to some highlights later. If we look at standings, you can see the conference standings. The Dolphins and the Titans are 3-0. Buccaneers are 3-0. And there's 6 teams that have not won a game, and that's a shocking Pittsburgh Steelers, a shocking Washington Commanders too. Then Detroit, Seattle, Jacksonville, and Cincinnati all struggling with their record. Briefly going over league leaders, we see Carson Palmer edging to the top. Quinn right behind him with Stafford, Luck, and Smith. Touchdown-wise, we see Drew Brees leading the league in touchdowns, and then a batch of them have 8. Matt Ryan, Eli Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger leading the league in interceptions. Rushing, we have Adrian Peterson, McFadden, Bell, Ingram, and Chris Johnson. Solid trifecta there, leading the league in rushing. Portis and Stewart lead the league in touchdowns. AJ Green, we see him with the leading receiver with 422 yards, passing Travis Kelce. Brian Hartline, it was still a shocker to me. Pierre Garçon and then Mike Wallace end up the top 5. Touchdowns, we see a handful with 5 with Fitzgerald, Garçon, and Green. Tackles, not sure if you care, but I'll have them there. You can pause the screen if you want to see it. Brown still holding the lead with a lot of players there in the top 13, top 10 with sacks. Interceptions, we see 4 players with 3 interceptions. And so next week we got a few good games. We got Packers versus Patriots, among others. It's ironic that the Browns are leading the AFC North because they're right now that bad. But we'll go ahead and get to some highlights. So instead of a few highlights, we're just going to share some trades and moves that happened at the end of this week. As you can see, a third-round pick goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers from San Francisco for Maurice Jones-Drew. So this is a trade where the Pittsburgh Steelers are not doing too great, and so they decided that their 28-year-old tiny running back MJD is better gotten rid of in return for a third-round pick. They also make a move trading away, we see Tremaine Brock, one of their various cornerbacks, for Curtis Marsh and then a 6th-round pick. So really just kind of saving some cap space, gathering a 6th-round overall pick. And then LaDainian Tomlinson gets signed. He's a 34-year-old running back. Tomlinson's career has been set back from a major injury when he was with the Chargers. Then he went to the Saints for a few years, and then he was in free agency. And so even though the Pittsburgh Steelers team is kind of giving up, not really giving up this year, but trying to rebuild a bit, they do have Lamar Miller as their starting running back, Jordan Todman, but now they bring in a veteran to kind of give them a solid running back if they're able to turn this season around. The Washington Commanders are also looking at moving some pieces. We see the Chicago Bears, who need some help with the receiving core, give up a 3rd-round pick for the former 1st-round selection, Darius Hayward-Bay. The Commanders have some decent receivers, but he was one of the better receiving options out there, and he ends up going to Chicago, and Chicago happens to be leading the NFC North, so a good move for them there. Pick up Branch from the Seattle Seahawks, trading a 5th-round pick and a 7th-round pick in 2016. In this move, they decide to bring in Branch as a defensive tackle. This is one of many Seattle Seahawks moves that we're going to go over in a bit. The Cincinnati Bengals decide to bring in Derek Anderson as a backup quarterback to Brock Osweiler. Osweiler is 0-4 this year. He's not having a great season, so they bring Anderson in to try to be a potential starter to maybe help develop their young players who are not Brock Osweiler. And now the rest for Seattle. So they already gave away their defensive tackle. And now they decided to trade away Mario Williams back from the 2006 draft. He was their top selection there. And they got rid of Troy Polamalu last year for a 1st-round pick from Cleveland. Now they decide to finally part ways with Mario Williams to the New York Giants. The Giants are a tough team, and now they're adding one of the best pass rushers in the league. Seattle being winless this year, we see they also give up 2 7th-round picks, but in return they're getting a 2nd-round pick and then some young talent. So a young running back, Mike Gillespie, who is a rookie this year. They do have Marshawn Lynch already, so they bring in a fresh rookie to maybe be a future running back for them. Tavon Wilson, a free safety. He's 23 years old. The current safety for the Seahawks is a lot young or older. I think it might be 27, 28. So this way, and around 71 overall. So Tavon Wilson kind of can be a starter for them and a future starter for them. And then Kwame Gathers was more of like an addition there to help the cap space, but a defensive tackle to kind of sort of replace Branch. Then we've got Willis McGahee, the 31-year-old running back who went as a backup running back to Seattle. Now that Seattle is having a rough start to their year, the need for a backup running back, the caliber of Willis McGahee, is less. So even though they just signed him, they are parting ways and sending him to Cleveland, who is trying to compete in the AFC North for the division lead, considering that the Baltimore Ravens are ahead by a little bit. And then we have a 5th-round pick and Chase Minnifield. And then they signed Chris Baker in free agency, the 25-year-old who didn't have any team, is now with the Seattle Seahawks. So there you have some of the Week 3 trades and signings heading into Week 4.